We used to have a joke when I worked in the services industry. We would get underbid by organizations that we knew would fail. And we'd say, well, guess what? We'll cut the cost in half and we will guarantee failure. So you know what you're in for. And you have to design a data science layer in every piece of software you build. And that changed our whole go-to-market, right, Jules? We needed to create an understanding that we're the innovator.
Welcome to The Growth Switch, the podcast where we explore the strategies, struggles, and breakthroughs of bold business leaders. I'm your host, Jules Fox, growth strategist and lead content creator at Aries Media. I'm here to uncover how today's top brands are scaling, overcoming challenges, and unlocking sustainable success. Now, for those of you just tuning in, Aries Media helps grow successful brands with comprehensive, hands-on support for sales, business development, and performance marketing. Go ahead and drop growth into the comments if you want to learn how to do that. Now, today, we're super fortunate. We have a very special guest, Justin Beals. He's a serial entrepreneur, technologist, and the CEO of StrikeGraph. He's raising the bar in cybersecurity compliance by building a company that prioritizes doing things the right way, even when the pressure is on to cut corners. Justin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jules. It's a pleasure to join you.
Yeah, thank you. So tell me a little bit more about how you got involved in cybersecurity.
Yeah, it's not a vertical that I've operated in for a long time. I'm fairly new to it. I was building another company in the Seattle, Washington area about 10 years ago called Koru, and we had some very sensitive data, some employee data that we were storing, and our customers were enterprise large banks, and they were asking some very specific questions about our security posture and requesting that we undergo an external or third-party audit before signing deals for us. And, I think as an entrepreneur, you're always really sensitive about pain points to revenue, in that there's oftentimes a business to be built there. And so that's why I got interested in the space, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. But you're also very passionate about it. When I read the stuff that you post, it feels like you're very ethical about what you do. For instance, StrikeGraph is all about doing cybersecurity compliance the right way.
Yeah, I think there's just not a lot of effective shortcuts. And I say that having been someone that wrote a lot of code and my job responsibility was measured in efficiency gains. But the challenge is that what's happening in security compliance situations in cybersecurity is we're taking something that is very operational, or you might call it qualitative. It's not quantitative. It's how does the business want to behave or the group want to behave in secure and resilient ways. And you're trying to apply a measurement technique like an audit or an assessment or a framework against something very qualitative. And that's very complicated, and it's easy to do it the wrong way. And so I have lots of criticisms. Like, I think human-led audits are highly prone to failure. They're not reliable. And many in the industry would say that they're not as reliable as they should be. And it just comes down to the sheer mathematics of it. They only really test 10 to 30% of the data. That's true in a financial audit as well. And if you read the opinion of the auditor, you can see how qualified it is. It is actually called a qualified opinion. And the other thing so to try and solve this problem, we had systems in the marketplace that would essentially dictate the security practice. But that's not very effective either. We call that kind of compliance in a box, because you wind up having to change your business to fit someone else's ideas. And you deserve the freedom, to operate the way you want. And of course, all of this is wrapped up in, I think, trust at the end of the day. And that's why ethics matters so much to me. And I probably have an emotional connection to it, because, the concept of building a company like StrikeGraph that was there to facilitate the effective acquisition of trust feels like a net positive for our community, culture, and country. And so, yeah, I'm impassioned by it, and I get probably emotional when I feel like people aren't giving it the same due effort. Yeah.
Sure. Well, I think there's a lot of cutting corners. And when you're cutting corners in risk and compliance, that can damage the company, that can damage the market, that can damage the entire industry, everything. So in order to not cut corners, what are some strategies you have to do it the right way?
Well, one thing I think you need to set a culture around is realizing, and I think this is just talking through the scenarios, that cutting a corner is more costly and less efficient and more painful than doing it right the first time, honestly. So when you're saying, hey, we need to, do data backups, it will be more painful to try and just cut corners around data backups than to set your team up with a good, effective process that's efficient for them, with a good tool set to meet the compliance outcome at the end of the day. And
Really?
so I think that one of the things I start with about, well, we could cut this corner is like, yeah, but it's not going to save you any time or money or energy, and you're less effective. Like, what was the point? We used to have a
Absolutely.
joke. Okay, Jules, we used to have a joke when I worked in the services industry. We would get underbid by organizations that we knew would fail. And we'd say, well, guess what? We'll cut the cost in half and we will guarantee failure. So you know what you're in for. And it's like, it just, the middle route does not pay off ever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic. I think I'm totally going to use that going forward when people try to underbid like that. I think that's a great idea. So tell me a little bit about as you're building StrideGraph in the early days of the pandemic, so many people moved online, which was fantastic for growth, but also became a predatory hub for all the cyber threats.
Yeah, it increased the concerns, and we saw some fairly high profile issues, some still going on today. The Colonial Pipeline, I think it was 2021, a hack was due to a lot of IT moving into the home in less secured environments, and the organization doing their best to flex with what was happening. I want to highlight that there are a lot of high profile attacks. I've yet to meet a CISO that didn't care about their job or the outcomes with what they do. But
Yeah.
you're just in any type of competitive environment, you're going to lose some games, and that's going to happen in security as well. I think even to today, it's still ongoing. The FBI just today, and so this may air a couple weeks after. But they busted a gang of North Korean hackers that were working in conjunction with a team in New Jersey and New York to pose as employees and gain access to companies and then infiltrate that company kind of like by doing an online hire. And
Yeah.
so it is the ever evolving world. Technology changes, AI changes things, and your security has to change. And this is one of the solutions we think about StrikeGraph is if you own your security posture, if it's your posture and you need to change it in our platform, we want to help companies flex with those differences over time.
Yeah, that sounds like a very collaborative approach versus prescriptive. So, what does it take to work in collaboration and harmony? You've talked about this virtuous win-win cycle that you can create with companies.
Yeah, one is that I think that you're shifting a mindset a little bit. One is you're taking away some fears that the industry has created because of the way they behave. So, one of the fears is this compliance is going to be a big drag on my business. It's going to change how I operate, and I'm not going to be very successful. And that experience is true, especially as the general solution on the marketplace was to hire a consultant to come solve the problem for you. You'd say, oh, well, I don't know HIPAA, so I'm going to hire this HIPAA consultant to come in and do HIPAA consulting for me. But the problem was the HIPAA consultant is driven to have the least amount of work for checking the box for that company as well. And so they will templatize a lot of their approach in much the same way some platforms templatize the approach or just say you got to fit this box to achieve a compliance outcome or hit a security solution. And so
Yeah.
the company at the end of the day was told to change. They say, oh, well, you got to change this. And that might have been generally good, but each situation is unique. And compliance is a decision you get to make or what security you want to do. And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
I think that this is when we work with the business, we're taking away that fear. Your operations today are probably doing good security. The
Yeah,
trick is to grow from strength, not to obsess over weakness. And that's very helpful. And I think our technology is designed in such a way to take advantage of what they're already doing and where they want to be.
sure. So I'm sure, there's a human component to this, and you talked about how sometimes humans are not enough, to do a full audit. So do you work with AI, and what role do you think the AI plays as we begin to evolve the protection as well?
Yeah, it's obviously a huge topic, and there is a lot of transformation going on with some of the large language model work and the AI work. I'm going to sound like an old fogey. I have been working on these types of probabilistic systems for many years, and I have felt that you have to design a data science layer in every piece of software you build. I probably started thinking that way a decade ago. And so when we started building StrikeGraph from the very get-go, we said this would have been 2020 to 2019. We have to architect our platform for a data science layer because AI will be a part of the solution. We do think that over time, AI will do the testing and it will do it very good. A lot of the things that we even see from an audit, a human perspective, AI can do today. So in our
Yeah.
platform, we have two major use cases for AI for security and compliance. One is AI as an internal auditor, and it's a very dynamic system. It designs testing rubrics, it then executes those testing rubrics. And so it really has all that flexibility of you design security for your business, we test according to that design. And then
Mhm.
the second is called Security Assistant. And it is that security consultant. It will kind of recommend a change to a control operation or an availability for integration and automation. And what's nice about it from an AI perspective, and I think you can apply this broadly about AI, is that when we had the consultant and they were hyper focused, they usually hyper focus on a particular standard. They're like, I'm an expert in HIPAA law, or I'm an expert in SOC 2, or I'm an expert in ISO 27001. That AI is, it might not be as precise, but the
Mhm.
reduction in precision is low compared to the breadth of information it can synthesize at once. And so it can
Yeah.
be an ISO 27001, a SOC 2, and a HIPAA expert when you need them at the right time. And so our
Mhm.
security assistant tool is really designed around that. It's more important to get breadth of information and synthesize that information in designing good practices.
Yeah. So how do you find the right companies to connect with? You're out there, you have a great process, you have a great company. How do you
Yeah.
connect with the right companies and get them to buy in?
Yeah, ours has been a little bit of a journey. I think everybody's is. We started out really feasting on the early stage B2B SaaS marketplace. And, this would have been between 2020 and 2022. And we had a lot of really great growth with those smaller businesses. Churn was high and, they just would go out of business or not catch that next round of funding.
Yeah.
One of my struggles was that they didn't see the value in some of our design elements around the platform because they weren't compliance leaders or security leaders. It was oftentimes like the CTO or someone that really what they wanted to do was build the software that the company was launching, and
Mhm.
security was always perceived as a roadblock. So I'd say about 3 years ago, we just realized that our style of software was a better fit up market, that a value buyer that looks at like the way we model our data, the types of AI tools that we bring to the table, the flexibility of the platform. We're starting to move into places of federated security where multiple divisions share in a security posture. These types of feature sets are driven to, between, I'd say, 500 employees to 10,000. And that changed our whole
Mhm.
go to market, right, Jules? Like
Yeah.
we needed to talk with a precise voice. We needed to create an understanding that we're the innovator. I told the team our challenge, and something I think we're achieving, is to set the bar for what a customer can expect to buy in the GRC marketplace. Like we're going
Mhm.
to be the better product,
Yeah.
period.
I mean,
Yeah,
very aspirational and beautiful. Yeah, that's exactly what companies need as well.
right.
So, you have all of this figured out over the next couple of years in an uncertain market. Things are a little bit bananas right now. How are you able to grow your company? Say you wanted to X 5X, 10X over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
What's the plan?
Well, first off, anybody that's pitching the 3x, 5x, 10x, they're either starting really early or I think it's a pipe dream right now until we get a more
Yeah.
stable world and economy. I think that's very tough. And a lot of the investors that I talk to and the bankers are like, hey, 40, 50% growth on a low churn is actually something really positive for us to look for. Right? And so I think we don't have that double, double, triple, triple, triple in the venture capital world happening very often. I mean, there are going to be some folks that really hit it out of the park for sure, but it's just not a common thing. So when we think about growth, in the market that we operate in, up market, I think the thing that has been most important and very powerful for our growth has been expansion.
Mhm.
And so when you're selling into a value driven market in that they value the product, not just the cost of the thing, what it does is powerful. Then what we have is a scenario where they want to expand that utilization over time. And you need to, if you're running a company or in the leadership of a company and you're making this shift, you need to figure out what your expansion looks like for a text to text expansion per contract.
Yeah. Now, some people are still going to see this as a cost. People who choose not to get insurance, like car insurance or something like that, they're like, why
Right.
would I waste money on car insurance? And it's like, well, because if for some reason you have an accident, then you're not financially bankrupt. Paint me a picture of what it's like for a company if they don't have a good cybersecurity system in place.
Yeah, they're really the gating factor here is usually some form of third-party audit or assessment or an internal report card they have to provide at a very detailed level. And that's certainly where we sit. We sit at that nexus of what are you doing operationally and can we get through a SOC 2 audit? Or more specifically, there are things like cybersecurity maturity model certifications or HIPAA law compliance. And the thing that makes these critical is that you really are going to lose contracts. I rarely talk about the ROI. We could talk about the cost of adoption, right? Like your price is bigger than a competitor's or something along those lines. Why would that
Okay.
be? But I almost
Yeah.
never get the discussion like, do we really need to do this? Because let's say you're doing CMMC, it's because you have a government contract or you're a vendor for a prime contractor for the federal government, usually Department of Homeland Security. And so you're
Okay.
going to lose your contract if you don't solve these problems effectively. And that's by design, right, Jules? I was interested in building a business in this space because of kind of the market appetite is strong,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah.
Smart. That's smart. So, how do people best connect with you? Justin, where can they find you? Where can they find StrikeGraph?
Yeah, so strikegraph.com, strikegraph.com. Certainly, we have a ton of material on there. And of course, like any good marketing driven website, a bunch of conversion opportunities to join us for a meeting if you want to sit down and talk about specific problems that you might be going through. And then, me personally, LinkedIn is a great spot. I also host a podcast called Secure Talk, and you can find Secure Talk on YouTube and Apple Podcast is probably our other biggest spot. And there, it's really very much about inviting security experts broadly, everything from nation state security to cybersecurity, to come and chat with us for a little bit about their purview on, trying to keep folks safe. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. And all of those links for all our viewers, for all our listeners, those links are going to be right down below in the show notes. Justin, thank you so much for your time and expertise. We really appreciate having you on the podcast.
Jules, I appreciate the invite and best of luck to you and your listeners.